Okina is a bloody finger who originally came from the land of reeds, but he can be located in the mountaintop of the giants, wielding one of the most notorious weapons in the game, the Rivers of Blood. But how would his build compete in practice against opponents both in the arena and bosses in the lands between? I'm bite-sized otaku, and in this video, we'll be exploring how an Okina cosplay could work and seeing whether any improvements could be made to take this build to the next level. But like the video and give it to me bite-sized. So our build is pretty simple. We have the white reed set and the Okina mask, which will boost our dexterity by 3 at the cost of lowering our focus. This set, while cool looking, doesn't boast the best defense or poise, which means spacing and speed will be crucial to any win. Then looking at our weapons, we have the wakizashi, which has a unique power stancing moveset when paired with any katana, despite being a dagger. I've opted for a blood infusion as we'll want to ramp up the bleed build up, but you could squeeze out some damage on an arcane infusion. And then we have the infamous Rivers of Blood, with its weapon art Corpse Piler, which extends the length of the blade with blood to slash enemies for damage and bleed build up. But outside of that, Okina doesn't have any talismans or incantations for this vanilla version of the build, but would include some in the improved version so we can compete with the meta while keeping to the overall theme. For our stats, Arcane will be our primary investment at 50, so we can maximize our bleed build up and damage from scaling. 60 vigor so we don't get vigor checked, and 29 endurance will allow us to stay on the offensive. We can then have 40 dexterity for some extra damage on a level 137 samurai. And so you might be thinking, don't we just spam the Rivers of Blood to win any fight? Well, that used to be the case before the weapon got nerfed, meaning we'll have to actually be strategic while fighting. But luckily, the bulk of the strategy really just involves a combination of jumping attacks while using Corpse Piler to rack up bleed and damage over time. We'll benefit from a jumping attack which can deal decent damage on enemies, and Corpse Piler which can attack from a distance, allowing you to avoid getting staggered while dealing damage. We also have the benefit of attacking quicker than other types of opponents, allowing us to dodge, and our moveset gives us some variety in how we attack, including a running strike which can catch rollers with a follow-up strike. But there are some problems. Our attack range is extremely short, meaning we have to be right on our opponent's noses to deal any damage. Most of our damage is dependent on bleed, requiring us to play aggressively and maintain pressure before the bleed meter disappears. And lastly, we don't have many options for attack outside of swinging our blade, meaning our moves are highly predictable and prone to parries or counters. So let's make some adjustments. Let's keep our armor as it is, as it's tricky to find pieces which aesthetically match what we have, and will probably benefit from speed more so than defense. Let's ditch the wakizashi and replace it with the nagakiba, which will provide a longer reach on the power stance katana moveset, which I personally find far better than our previous combination. The nagakiba can use spinning slash, as this has the ability to catch opponents for multiple hits with great hyper armor, allowing us to quickly build up bleed. We'll keep the Rivers of Blood as a signature weapon, but place it in our left hand, as it will be useful for finishing off enemies with low health using Corpse Piler, and will also look less sweaty if we don't rely on it. For our talismans, we can use the Lord of Blood's Exaltation and the Shard of Alexander for bonus damage. The Green Turtle talisman will boost our stamina regeneration speed, and the Millicent's Prophesis will give us +5 dexterity and extra damage. And to cast our incantation, I'll use the Dragon Communion Seal, which scales with our arcane investment, and we can use this to cast Swarm of Flies for brilliant stagger and pressure, Blood Flame Talons for damage, Blood Boon for area of effect, and Blood Flame Blade to buff our nagakiba, all of which will help us build up bleed. We can also adjust our stats by going for less dexterity and more faith and endurance, alongside bonus strength for our weapon requirements. But now, let's give it a spin. So now we have far more options available for combat, starting with Blood Flame Blade and Swarm of Flies to pressure our opponent. While our attacks have a bit of a wind up, our Spinning Slash is brilliant for punishing aggressive enemies with a Sega inducing triple hit which racks up bleed. Our attack combinations are way better, as we now have longer reach alongside a far more aggressive moveset which takes advantage of quick strikes to chip opponents at a distance. Even against enemies using popular weapons like the Godskin Stitcher, we are nimble enough to dodge and strike when needed, even outmaneuvering a honed bow. The Rivers of Blood is fantastic for finishing off enemies with low health due to its range and chip damage. We can also use Blood Boon for crowd control, funneling enemies with a pool of burning blood, And Blood Flame Talons can catch enemies who roll around us with an explosion that deals brilliant damage. You can even combine Swarm of Flies with Blood Flame Talons for a combo which can knock off a large chunk of an enemy's health. And because bleed build-up can't be blocked, you can even counter shield users who utilise overpowered tactics like the fingerprint shield. But overall, Okina is a late game cosplay which is perfect for a new game run where the enemies are tougher, or being brilliant for invasions at a higher level, including fights in the arena. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and of course subscribe. This is Bite Sized Otaku, and I hope you enjoyed.